of. So perhaps if you've got your eye on one particular cask, the distillery will say, yep, you can have that, but you can only have that if you buy a whole bunch of others. Yeah. And then what do you do with the others? What do you pass them on? Do you bottle them? It's like, who knows? But Cadden Heads have been going for I don't know how many years. Yeah, they have an amazing stock. I have to say, if anybody has never been to Campbelltown, go. Go. That's the first step. But also do the Cadden Heads warehouse tasting because it's absolutely fantastic. The first time I did it, Mark Watt was still in charge of Cadden Heads. He's since moved on to form his own independent bottlers. But I remember I rocked up at Campbelltown. I'd booked for the warehouse tour. He was like, yeah, come on, like, let's go. Oh, hold on a second. He printed off a spreadsheet, and then clutched that. And we went into the warehouse and then passed it to me, and he said, where do you want to start?
Oh, my God.
It's like 35 quid. I was like, oh, yeah, this is the best 35 quid I've ever spent. So yeah, about 8 casks. You literally just like bung out, Valanche, straight into your glass, away you go.
Word.
Yeah, very, very generous guy.
These people of privilege in the whiskey world.
No, this was before this was whilst I was still a humble teacher.
Oh.
They're just like that. There's no airs and graces. They're just like super nice people. So yeah, if you book on the tour, you get the best value for money. Awesome. Somebody has said, are they all open now? In Campbelltown? Contacted them recently, and I was told that Springbank are taking bookings for tours, but you can only book a maximum of 2 weeks in advance. And they won't do the tastings on site, so I think they give you the drams to take away at the moment, the whole COVID thing. Glen Scotia, which is owned by a different company, they have just put in a brand new visitor centre manager. So that's kind of a good sign. I think if they're going to put a new centre manager in, then they must be opening soon.
They must be opening, yes.
Yeah. And
otherwise that centre manager's got the best job in the world.
Yeah, when I was a teacher, I always used to say, teaching's great as long as it's without the kids.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe.
And how long did you last at teaching? No,
20 years. Yeah, I did I did my time, and decided to do something I was a bit more passionate about.
Very good. Decided to drink more is
to be honest, since I've left teaching, I drink a lot less. Let's put it that way.
Already. Well, we move on when we stop talking about your teaching career.
Yes. Let's move on to. We're going to move on to dram number 6, which is in your pack. Yeah, so this is our penultimate dram. Dram number 6 should be your Cadden Heads, Girvan, 14 years, Madeira cask. So make sure I drink them in the right order this time.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. So, Justine, tell me what's going on with Scotland and single grain, because this is a 14-year-old single grain. I think I looked up earlier. It's 45 quid or 47 quid or something like that. It's ridiculous. Like as part of the club, we drank a Port Dundas of 31-year-old, and it's 140, 145, something like that.
Okay.
I mean, single grain in Scotland is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean,
so Port Dundas is no longer. It's a closed distillery, so that's why that's significantly higher in price. Girvan,
but even that, for a 31-year-old single grain, that's not bad.
Well, yes, and single grain offers great value when you look at these high age statements. If you compared the equivalent of single malt, if you were looking for a 31-year-old single malt, you'd be paying a lot more than
considerably.
That. Yeah. So I mean, single grain traditionally was used just for components in blended whiskey. So very few single grain bottlings. I mean, if you go back to the early 1900s, Cambus was an 8-year-old whiskey. Now, there was a great big debate as to the whole what is whiskey court case, because the single malt producers were getting a bit sort of worried about, single grain whiskey and blended whiskey, and they wanted to sort of more or less say, single malt is the only Scotch whisky.
Yeah.
So there was a whole big thing, and Cambus released and advertised this 8-year-old whiskey because it was popular, it was on the shelves, people were buying it as a way of saying, yes, single grain whiskey is Scotch whiskey. But traditionally, it's only really been a component for blended whiskey.
Mm-hmm. This one from Girvan, is this... So William Grant owns it, so I imagine it's going into Granson.
Yeah, William Grant. Absolutely. It was an unusual distillery site because on the same site, or very close by, they also have a malt distillery.
Yes.
So the Girvan is just off the coast, and you can see the Ailsa Craig sort of rock. So that's why the malt distillery has the name Ailsa Bay. And that's a peated single malt lowland whiskey, so it's very, very unusual, but it's pretty much on the same site.
And then Ladyburn have some sort of involvement. They were on somewhere on the same site as well, were they?
Ladyburn, I believe, was... I don't know too much about that. I think that was a very short-lived distillery. I mean, I know it's no more, and so any bottlings are pretty rare, pretty scarce. But I'll be honest, I don't know a huge amount about Ladyburn, so I'm going to have to go away and do some research now.
I could be talking nonsense, so don't worry. But this is 3 years in Madeira at the end, I believe.
Yes, so this is so this is single grain. This has, let me have a wee look. No, I don't know. But it will be finished. It will be finished in a Madeira cask. I'm not too sure how long for.
But it's definitely got the caramel. It's definitely got...
Yeah. Interesting to see a single grain finished in something like that.
In a wine cask, yeah.
Aye.
So it was part of the Cadenheads, or the Cadenheads wine cask, wasn't it? Sorry, I'm gonna do that the whole way through. Yeah.
No, you're right. It's distilled in 2006, bottled in 2020, but it was finished in a Madeira cask since December 2017. So yeah, so it's a 3-year-old finish, which is a good time for a finish.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people say a finish, and it's only been seen the cask for like a month or two.
A month or two, yeah.
So it is a proper finish.
It is definitely.
But I love a single grain. It's got that wonderful texture. It provides great value for money.
Absolutely.
And
it's got the body. It's just, I don't know why. It's very strange how Scotland hasn't taken on to it. I mean, we've got a number of different producers that are producing a really good single grain here. We've got
that's delicious.
Teeling that are doing a very good single grain. Myth and Madness from IDL are doing one of the incredible. They're doing like a Spanish oak finished one, and it's incredible. So, I mean, that's really nice,
isn't it?
That's so good.
It's absolutely top. Again, as you said, £50. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can spend a lot more and get a lot worse than £50 for that. That's a cracking. I mean, usually when I like single grain, I like much older single grain. I just find, but I mean that's only 14 years, which for me is actually quite young for a grain whiskey. But
it's got a lot of wood. It's got a lot of wood in there, doesn't it?
Yeah, good quality casks. Good quality casks there. It's got kind of like a kind of fruity loaf kind of raisins
it's got that spice there.
And like a kind of stewed fruits, much more complex than the others. That's
really
cracking.
is, yeah. I just think the quality of the single grain coming out of Scotland is what I've tasted, and as I say, full disclosure, the other one I've tasted is a 31-year-old Portland, which is going to be great. But
yes, I mean, and again, looking at the distillery, it depends on the kind of grain that they use. So this would have, if it's only 14 years old, it would be wheat.
Okay.
But if you go to, say, like North British, there's, I think, the only grain distillery, or at least one of the very few grain distilleries that are still distilling using maize or corn.
Yep.
So you've got a very different texture there. But some of the old Girvans, I've tried a 30-year-old Girvan, and it was just before they changed from maize to wheat.
Can you?
So, I'll just have a wee check. 6 out of 10 for this from John. Love the toffee notes. Grain is so underrated. It is, but because of the ridiculous pricing with whiskey at the moment and the value that it offers, it's becoming more and more popular for sure.
It is. And that's always the concern. The more that you talk about a whiskey, the more that it tends to bump up in price.
Yeah, sometimes it's good to be quiet, isn't it?
It is,
Keep them to yourself so that not everybody's chasing them.
The best kept secret, should we call it. Don't tell anybody, nobody watching, tell anybody about how good it is.
Yeah, so I think we should move on to the last dram. I think we've run out a wee bit over time, but it's all good. So our last dram this evening is dram number 4. And this is your Annandale Manor's Sword. And the reason I've left this to the end is because this is a peated dram. Annandale do 2 different expressions. So there's Manor Word, which is unpeated, and then Manor Sword, which is peated. This one is, if I can check my notes and get the right, because all of the Annandale whiskies are single cask strength at the moment. So yeah, I thought this was pretty. This is 61.5. All right, so
nice.
This is a nice.
This is nice way to finish.
Yeah. Not too bad for a Tuesday evening when you're, 14 drams in. Finish on a 61.5%.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
But the question on this obviously is going to be about STR casks.
Yeah, always sounds dodgy, doesn't it? Something.
It does.
Something you need a cream for or something. Yeah.
I get taking a cask, shaving it down, toasting it, charring it again.
Mm-hmm.
However, my issue is calling it a Burgundy cask when doing that. So you're shaving the Burgundy off, you're shaving the wine off, toasting it again, you're charring it again. Is that really a Burgundy cask after all that?
I guess I probably wouldn't refer to it, and I don't know too many people who refer to it as a Burgundy cask. Maybe we'll just say like a red wine cask. Yeah. And it was a kind of process that was implemented by Dr. Jim Swan, and he worked with a lot of new distilleries, and it was something that wasn't really being done, so he kind of put this into place. And what it does is it kind of adds to much younger whiskies. It kind of lends a sort of sense of more maturity to the whiskey. So it's something that he's done in many of the new distilleries, or he did do, sadly passed away. You've got Kingsbarns, they do the STR. You've got Annandale down in England. There's Dartmoor Distillery, so they do STRs, I think. There's a whole bunch of Kilhoman was one as well. There's a whole bunch of relatively.
He was a busy man. Jim Swan was a
much
busy
in
man.
demand and very he was a bit of a legend. So he worked very well with a lot of distilleries. So this was something that is pretty much associated with him. Okay. The shaved. Sometimes you hear scraped, toasted, and recharred, or shaved, toasted, and recharred. But I've always known it as a sort of a red wine cask as opposed to specifically sort of a Burgundy. But
it's only they specify Burgundy. I suppose. And then it's seasoned then with sherry. Is that right?
So Annandale, they have 2 different types of casks. So they have the bourbon and the sherry. So I was there because it's not too far from Bladnoch. Okay, so I visited at the same time that I was at Bladnoch, which I mentioned earlier. So all single cask and peated, unpeated, and some of it is matured in sherry, some of it is matured in bourbon, but all sold as single cask. So it really does depend on the one that you've got. So we have here STR 357. So I'm not 100% sure what kind of cask that was, but I think, are you getting lots of sherry notes with this? Because I'm getting more of a sort of a bourbon note. But
possibly, I could be wrong, but
no, that might be something I need to double check. I mean, I know it's got a phenol level of 45 ppm, so it's not. It's peated.
It's not. So I sort of define peated as the medicinal level where you get the big fan of the TCP as a tasting note, but that's got a nutty, that's a nutty lower level. To it.
John's giving this 8 out of 10. Best of the night. Loves the peat and the high ABV. I reckon he's a bit of a lush. 61.5, eh?
What?
It's actually very, I mean, maybe it is because it's the 6th dram of the night and the umpteenth of the day, but even at 61.5, it's actually not as as
you're not reaching for the water to cut that down.
Yeah. But Cracking Distillery, again, if you get a chance to visit, so it was taken over, so it's an old distillery, which has been revamped and taken over, but they're very much keeping the wonderful heritage of the original distillery. So when you visit, you can actually see the old sort of brick hearths that would have been sitting underneath the original pot stills. They've kind of cordoned that off and kept that as part of the visitor centre.
And they aren't still flaming the
No, they're
stills.
just like almost like a sort of outdoor museum piece.
Yeah.
Absolutely great tour, and I think I just went and did the standard tour, and the tour guide, a guy called Frederick, so good shout out to Frederick there, because the tour was absolutely superb. Really enjoyed it, so well worth a visit. I think it's a very well set out, well designed visitor experience, and then you go to the warehouse and you can try 4 different Annandale expressions, and you can also try their peated and unpeated new make spirit as well. So yeah, they're quite happy to share all of that. So all good stuff. Yeah.
No, that's great. It's not peated. Not something I reach for a huge amount, except if I'm going, hugely overboard and going for Lowlands. But let's say it's got that nutty. Smoky, but it's more nutty than smoky, right?
So they used the peat actually comes from the Black Isle. This is a question I asked when I was on the tour. So you're talking about those sort of medicinal notes that you would get maybe from Isla peat. Different vegetation in different areas created obviously different peat. So you wouldn't necessarily get the same sort of medicinal notes as you've got for say like your Isla single malts. Different peat, different sort of flavours that are being imparted into the barley. So maybe that's.
Maybe that's what I'm getting. Yeah. No, that's great.
So of the Johnny, of the 6, would you have a favourite this evening?
I mean, I'm a single grain fan, so I'm always going to go for the single grain. The Annandale, the peated is quite surprising, but no, the single grain. I'm taking the single grain all day long. What about yourself?
Absolutely. No, I think the single grain is probably my favourite of the 6 tonight. I do like the Annandale, and when I was there, I did buy a bottle. It came in at about £148. Yeah. Right. So when you think you can get that Girvan 14 for 50 quid, But I think on the night that was absolutely my favourite. More complex, a lot more flavours coming through. Just very well integrated, very well balanced.
Very good. No, look, I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed your knowledge.
Thank you for joining me. Otherwise, it's just me talking to a camera.
Exactly.
Again.
Hopefully, I'm well informed about Lowlands
and
from now on.
And you need to come through. You need to come over and visit all of the Lowland distilleries, especially the Fife ones.
The Fife Whiskey Festival.
Let me know. We'll save you a place.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Cheers, Johnny. Thank you, guys. Any more questions? You can always find us on the Belfast Whisky Week site. Always free if you want to find us a question or comment through. We'll try our best to get back to you. I think that's the end of this session. So thank you for joining us, and cheers. Thanks.